The tale begins in a world ruled by 5 powerful witches, beings unlike any other. They are the Witch of the Forest, Water, Silence, the Azure Moon, and the Unnamed Witch. For centuries they wielded their power without restraint, driven solely by self-interest. Their actions inspired only fear and dread, and the catastrophes they unleashed became synonymous with their presence. The most formidable among them was the Lunar Enchantress. She resided alone at the apex of an ancient fortress situated deep within unexplored territory. The fortress's numerous traps served as a challenge rather than a deterrent. Legend has it that if someone succeeds in navigating the traps and reaching the fortress's highest level, the witch will grant their deepest desire. Many brave adventurers are willing to risk everything for a single blessing from the witch. They arrive from distant lands, but none ever return. 2 young aspirants have embarked on this perilous journey. One of them is a member of the Farsas royal lineage, Prince Oscar, and the other is his loyal attendant, Razel. As they enter the fortress, Oscar exudes confidence, while his attendant appears apprehensive. At the first floor of the fortress, a lion jumps out and attacks them, but the prince fights and kills it. Then they both rush up the stairs. The prince gazes up at the stairs and wonders how long it will take to ascend them. His attendant advises him to be cautious and not look down. The prince recalls that his great-grandfather was the last one to reach the top. His attendant mentions that his grandfather took 10 men to the fortress 70 years ago, which seems peculiar for such an easy task. As they keep climbing, the attendant cautions that things will get much more challenging from there and suggests they take a break. The prince informs Razel that he can stop, but he intends to proceed. His attendant is taken aback, concerned about what he'll say if he returns to the castle without the prince. The prince looks at his attendant and tells him to inform the others that he dismissed him. The prince believes the curse will ultimately destroy the royal family. His attendant thinks a better solution might exist if they search for it, but the prince says they found nothing helpful in 15 years. At the door, Oscar suggests speaking to the witch to lift the curse. If that fails, they'll seek the silent sorceress next. He asks if the plan is flawless, but Razel knows nothing involving witches ever is. As the door opens, giant eagle statues appear, and the attendant panics. When one eagle swoops aggressively, the terrified attendant wishes to go home. The prince, unfazed, smiles at the challenge and tells Razel to wait outside so they don't get in the way. Meanwhile, a young woman updates her superior that new competitors have arrived, eager to participate in the challenge. Her superior inquires about their progress, seeking to understand how they're faring. The assistant responds that they're advancing smoothly, having already reached the stone statues, a feat that showcases their skill and determination. The superior observes that this is impressive, considering the obstacles they've encountered so far. She predicts they'll likely struggle in the lion's guardian chamber, a room infamous for its complexity. She inquires about the number of competitors, and the assistant replies that there are 2, but only one is actively participating, while the other seems to be merely a spectator. The superior finds this intriguing, wondering how the duo will fare despite their uneven partnership. However, she believes the room will be insurmountable with only one effective contender, making their task even more formidable. She also asks if the Fighting Spirit Award has been activated, and her assistant responds that it hasn't, but she's confident they'll prevail nonetheless, driven by their determination and tenacity. The prince then defeats the enormous bird of prey, showcasing his remarkable strength and agility. His aide stands frozen, watching the battle with a mixture of awe and terror, struggling to comprehend the prince's skill. After finishing the first bird, the prince thinks only one more remains, and he prepares himself for the next challenge. As the second bird swoops in to attack, he engages it in combat, using his quick reflexes and cunning to outmaneuver the beast. With a swift motion, he dispatches it by breaking its neck, ending the battle in a flash. After the fight, the prince says with a smile that this palace is really frustrating him. Jokingly, he remarks that the last thing he needs is to be eaten by a giant bird. His helper stares in disbelief, wondering how he can stay so calm. Oscar scans the area and signals Razel to keep moving, thinking he cleared everything. But he suddenly halts. The floor has collapsed behind him. A massive hole now gapes where his helper once stood. Terror grips the attendant as he stands on the edge. Oscar, alarmed, reaches out and urges him to hold on, desperate for him to make it. But Razel, calm despite the danger, insists he go on alone. He offers a faint, apologetic smile, as if accepting his fate. Oscar, furious and unwilling to let go, demands he stop speaking nonsense. In response, the servant gives a sly, knowing grin, his way of saying farewell and placing hope in the prince's future. Then, without another word, he falls into the darkness. The prince tries to help, but he's determined to continue. Now alone, Prince Oscar proceeds to the next challenge, sorrowful about losing his helper. When he reaches the top, he's surprised to find a simple chamber. A voice invites him in, and he meets a lovely girl named Tanasha, who welcomes him warmly. The prince asks if she's using magic to appear youthful, but she dismissing it as foolish. She praises him for solo climbing her tower and asks about his name. When he reveals his royal lineage, she's taken aback and recalls his grandfather with a fond memory. The prince jokes about not being a charmer, and Tanasha smiles, saying he's a better person than his grandfather. The witch notes that the prince's grandfather was young and trusting. The prince inquires about her solitude in the tower, and she introduces Ritora, her companion. Suddenly, she reveals that they found his friend Razel, who's safe on the first level. The prince is relieved and asks if Razel is truly okay. Ritora confirms that Razel is fine. The witch explains that she designed the tower to avoid dealing with fatalities, and anyone in danger is transported to the first floor. She altered the memories of those who didn't complete the challenge, sending them to random locations. The prince wonders why she doesn't interact with people like other witches. The witch prefers to keep a low profile and avoid showcasing her powers. The prince finds her approach unfortunate. The witch asks if the curse is related to his reason for visiting her. Prince Oscar reveals that the Witch of Silence cast a curse on his family 15 years ago, affecting his father and future generations. The curse prevents women pregnant by Farsas men from carrying their babies to term, ultimately leading to the family's extinction. As a child, Prince Oscar didn't understand the curse's implications, but as he grew older, he realized something was wrong. Despite efforts to find a cure, none have been successful. The prince has been working hard to become a strong leader, studying and training to fight, while also searching for a way to break the curse. Now he's hoping the witch can provide answers. The witch asks a surprising question. Why would she curse his family? The prince thinks for a moment before responding that his father never told him the truth, but he suspects it might be connected to his mother, who died long ago. The witch's expression changes as she gets up and touches the prince's face, then sits back down. The prince asks what she did, and she replies that she showed him part of the curse. When he touches his face, she explains that what he felt isn't a curse, but rather a blessing or protection placed upon him. She adds that a real curse wouldn't be so powerful and wouldn't work in such a way. The curse is strong, and simply dealing with it won't prevent it from harming him. However, depending on who possesses it, the object can become more potent in a way that's not immediately apparent. It's similar to how he's been marked. She says that blessings and curses are akin to words that have meaning because someone assigned it. When it comes to curses, they can also alter things in detrimental ways and obstruct good things. Blessings, on the other hand, assist people from the outset and make them resilient. She tells him that his curse is actually like a unique protection that he's had since birth. A normal body might not have been able to withstand it, and it was probably challenging for the Witch of Silence to explain. What a curse or blessing does depends on the person who created it. Without an extremely powerful solution, he can't control it from within, and even the person who created it can't reverse it. Then she ponders and says that if they conduct some tests, she believes magic can weaken it. She gazes at his chest and says that the mark is deeply embedded within him, much more than anticipated, just like the Witch of Silence mentioned. The prince inquires if she means it's impossible to lift the curse, and the witch's expression turns grave as she considers his question. The witch says it's regrettable, but she'll do everything in her power to assist him, and her determination is palpable in her voice. The prince asks how they'll proceed, and she explains it's a straightforward process that requires careful deliberation. They need to find a woman with robust magical abilities to help with specific incantations that can counteract the curse. The prince asks if this is feasible and where he can find such a woman. The witch replies that there are probably a few women on the continent who fit the criteria, and she begins to outline the possibilities. As the prince listens, he becomes increasingly convinced that the solution lies with the witch herself. He proposes to her, asking her to lead the tower and marry him. The proposal catches her off guard, and she's shocked, her eyes wide with surprise as she vehemently refuses, saying it's impossible and out of the question. The prince reminds her that she promised him a wish if he won her game, and this solution is better than searching for some unknown woman who might fit the bill. The witch is taken aback, her expression a mix of shock and incredulity, as she tells him that there are limits to what she's willing to do, and she's certainly not running off with a young boy like him. The prince asks if she has a romantic partner or husband, but she assures him that she doesn't have either. He mentions that age wouldn't be a barrier to their potential union, but she gets defensive, her voice rising as she asks who he's calling old. Her expression turns grave as she cautions him that combining their bloodlines would be a recipe for catastrophe, and people would be scandalized by the idea. The prince mentions that he's somewhat intrigued by the prospect of seeing that happen. She responds by saying that he's really similar to Regis's descendant, both of them having eccentric personalities. He grins and says that she speaks as if it's a defect. She replies that no matter what, it's not going to happen, and asks if he truly desires a wish like that to come true, considering she could be his great-grandmother. The prince's face turns somber as he says that he's not sure if his grandfather would condemn him from beyond the grave for this, but he's willing to try, and he wouldn't let her go. She's infuriated with him and says that she never consented to this. He mentions that spending 80 years or so with him shouldn't be a problem. She shouts at him, saying this isn't the problem. Then she puts a curse on him, saying she'll confuse his mind until he makes silly noises like a bird and forces him to live in a dirty place forever. He replies that she shouldn't think she can just let him go and do something like that. She should think carefully. But she's surprised that her magic doesn't work on him. With an angry face, she asks him why he's carrying acacia and says it's a precious thing. He smiles and says it's more than just a valuable thing, it's really useful. He explains that it's a special sword that his family has had for a long time, and it's the only sword that can resist magic. It's said to be very powerful against magic users, and witches like Tanasha are no exception. She tries her magic on him again, but it doesn't work. Then she says they should talk more about this. He agrees and tells her to relax. Later she says he's a very strange and stubborn person and should forget about this idea. He says he's sure they're both equally stubborn. The prince is mentioning that he heard she lived at Farsas Castle about 70 years ago, which sparks a conversation between them. She corrects him, saying it was actually around half a year, during which time she was planting flowers and teaching magic, finding the experience quite enjoyable. This leads the prince to ask if her stay was his grandfather's wish, but she denies it, leaving him to propose a new idea. He suggests she leave the castle and live with him at Farsas Castle for a year as the successful challenger. This is his reward. As he looks at her serious face, he asks if he can't have that much, and she thinks back to the past, recalling something. After a moment, she agrees to the proposal, and they discuss the terms. She will leave the tower as his guardian, and for 1 year he will be committed to a contract with her. The prince smiles, pleased with the arrangement, and she casts a spell on his head, marking him. Before leaving, she instructs her servant not to close the entrance and to take care of herself. As she prepares to depart, the prince mentions that if she changes her mind en route, she can stay at the castle as his wife, his words hanging in the air like an unspoken proposition. She looks at him in surprise, her eyes widening slightly as she processes the unexpected offer. A gentle smile spreads across her face, and she assures him she won't change her mind, her tone firm but polite. Afterward, they go to wake Razel from his sleep and mount their horses, beginning their journey to the castle. And so, the fairy tale of the Cursed Prince and the Witch of the Azure begins. The royal family of Farsas has ruled for over 7 centuries, their power secured by the legendary sword Acacia and an unmatched army. Even in times of peace, the castle's warriors train relentlessly, a dedication the witch quietly admires. Razel asks what she's up to. Though she replies casually, he joins her on the balcony, noticing her eyes fixed on the training grounds. Razel points out Generals Ars and Meladina, noting that despite his youth, Ars is the kingdom's most formidable and respected commander. The witch points out how Ars needs to refine his skills and take his time, sparking a conversation about Prince Oscar's abilities and the rumors that surround him. Razel enthusiastically claims that Prince surpasses General Ars in strength, making him the strongest individual on the continent and a force to be reckoned with. The witch is taken aback by this revelation, wondering if her tower's defenses were inadequate and if she had underestimated the prince's abilities. Razel asks about her thoughts, but she brushes it off, asking if he has any tasks for her to attend to in the castle. As they continue to converse, the witch can't help but feel a sense of curiosity and intrigue about the prince and his remarkable abilities. He suggests that she visit the prince in his chambers. When she enters, he gently pats her on the head and apologizes for leaving her alone for a full week. Then he asks for her sincere opinion about the castle and inquires if anyone has been disturbing her. She smiles, assuring him she can take care of herself and that everyone has been kind. Still, she mentions a few odd incidents that caught her attention. Curious, the prince asks her to explain, noting that everyone knows about her past in the tower. She shows him her ornaments, revealing their magical restraints that suppress her powers, only he knows her true identity as a witch during her stay. He offers a listening ear, but she gently declines, saying she can handle things on her own. He gestures for her to make herself at home and returns to his paperwork. Watching him work, she notes how much he seems to be carrying. He mentions an upcoming celebration and the growing demands of diplomacy, security, and other duties. She's surprised he handles so much, and he admits he even had to fill in for someone last month and meet with the Prime Minister, which added to his already heavy load. She gazes at him with newfound admiration, saying that she wouldn't have expected him to be tasked with so much responsibility. Furthermore, she perceives him as lacking motivation and being careless. He gives her a surprised look, taken aback by her remark. As he works, he requests that she share her observations about the castle. She appears astonished, wondering if she's been tasked with gathering information. She's had limited insight into the castle's internal workings and hasn't encountered any dubious individuals. He clarifies that he's not seeking that type of information and instead asks her to describe her activities. She's been serving as a royal apprentice, primarily observing and mimicking others. She notices his timetable posted on the wall and asks if it's for convenient reference. He explains that this system enables him to prioritize tasks and is actually advantageous. He inquires if being a pupil is demanding. Observing him at work, she comments that lacking resources must make tasks arduous. She proposes that perhaps she could assist with the festival decorations. She demonstrates her luminescent magic, suggesting that she could illuminate the moat, creating a stunning effect. He deliberates whether it's solely the magic that would make it effective, implying that a conventional lamp would likely be inferior. As she floats into the room, she claims that using magic is effortless, thrifty, and efficient, her words flowing with confidence. Observing her, he thinks that despite her sealed powers, she's still remarkably nimble in flight, a testament to her innate talent. Watching her soar through the room, he comments that she's indeed a witch, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. She smiles, saying he's finally noticed, her expression playful and mischievous. With a flick of her magic, she lights a candle, explaining that the flame's duration depends on the user's magical strength, a quiet reminder of her own power. Most could only light a few shops, but she grins, claiming she could light the whole kingdom. Though her magic is currently sealed, she promises he'll see it during the festival, leaving him intrigued. He smiles, excited about his first Farsas festival, so he heads to the door, saying he needs to check the schedule. She grabs his shirt, insisting he must take part, her grip firm but gentle. He chuckles, assuring her he's only joking, and returns to work. She inquires if he has any tasks for her. He replies with a confused answer, so she mentions that Razel suggested she ask for tasks. He waves it off, saying Razel's opinion doesn't matter, and someone like him doesn't need help. She pulls a playful face. He reminds her of their deal to use her magic to break his curse. She teases him about being busy with festival work, but he steers the conversation back, asking about their plan, his eyes locked on hers. She tells him that magic is all twisted up, and she moves closer to him, asking him to turn around and look at her. He asks her about their agreement, wondering if she can define such a thing. Then she uses magic to dissolve the fancy words that have no basis in reality. It's like trying to shape rain into forms that don't exist. It's impossible. It's like a circle that has no beginning or end, and he can't escape it. She tells him that the circle is a curious thing, but somehow their desires take shape at its center. She places her hands in the center of the circle. After that, she warns him that this magic isn't bound by the laws of nature and will be disrupted if attacked from the outside. He assures her that the curse will break before it has a chance to harm. She advises him to focus on his mental state rather than stressing about the curse. Then he asks her if they agreed to this in their contract. She replies that this is a witch's contract and he should have expected as much. He whispers that he should have anticipated this and then says that he'd be happy if he could just marry her instead. She sternly tells him not to joke about that. He says that as long as he's alive, he'll need her help, and she acknowledges that she already knows that. Then he asks her to find a way to circumvent the curse to preserve the royal bloodline. He adds that it's not just about that. When he was a young child, there were several incidents where kids vanished. As he reflects on his past, his cousin's disappearance stands out as a pivotal moment that forced him to become a strong leader at a young age. She asks him about the fate of the missing children, and he reveals that it's still a puzzle he's trying to solve. The timing of these events is crucial, and she inquires if it was before or after the silent witch appeared on the scene. He confirms that it was after his mother's passing, and he's certain that the disappearances started soon after. Her eyes lock onto his, and she asks him to share what happened, but he brushes it off, saying it's nothing important. Undeterred, she comes closer, her touch gentle as she examines his eyes, noting the dark bags and weariness etched on his face. He admits to being a bit sleepy, having only managed 3 hours of rest. With a wave of her hand, she uses her magic to guide him to the bed, where he sinks in, still preoccupied with the papers he needs to finish. She encourages him to take a break, promising he'll feel better soon, and with a soft gaze, she asks him to look at her. A subtle spell induces drowsiness, and he succumbs to her magic, his eyelids growing heavy. As she covers him with a blanket, her thoughts turn to the missing children and the curse that seems to plague his family. The weight of responsibility passed down through generations is palpable, and she can't help but admire his dedication. Her eyes fall on the papers he's working on, and she pats him on the head, praising his hard work. When he wakes up, he's greeted by the familiar sight of corrected documents, and he can't help but think that she's still one step ahead of him. On the day of the festival, the air is filled with the scent of delicious food as Tinashe strolls through the lively capital, watching children play with paper gliders and enjoy sweet treats. The atmosphere is vibrant, with the sound of laughter and chatter filling the air, creating a joyful cacophony that resonates throughout the city. As the day wears on, she realizes it's time to get to work, and she heads off to join the other mages at the designated gathering spot. Together, they conjure flames, and in an instant, the entire capital is bathed in a warm, golden light that seems to dance across the rooftops and streets. The crowd erupts in joy, marveling at the dazzling display of light that has transformed the city into a magical wonderland. One of the mages notices Tinashe and approaches her, curious about her experience and how she's enjoying the festivities. He asks if she's new to the group, and she smiles, feeling a sense of belonging and connection with her fellow mages. He introduces himself as Themis with a warm smile, and they shake hands in friendly greeting. Tinashe notes a peculiar design on his hand but ignores it. As they part ways, he offers his assistance, telling her not to hesitate to contact him if she needs anything. She thanks him, feeling grateful for the kind gesture. As she continues to enjoy the festival, her attention is drawn to the enticing aroma of food, and she heads towards it, her stomach growling with anticipation. As she walks, one of the mages cautions her, advising her not to venture out alone, warning her about the potential dangers that lurk in the shadows. Tinashe catches a glimpse of him before focusing on finding something sweet to eat. Meanwhile, Ars comments to Melodina that everything looks fantastic, and they share a smile, enjoying the festive atmosphere. As they stand together, he can't help but think that a drink would be just what he needs to unwind. She senses his longing and reminds him that they're currently on watch, their duties taking priority over personal desires. His curiosity gets the better of him, and he asks about the king's whereabouts, wondering if he's safe inside the castle. She reassures him that the king is indeed busy with official business and didn't request her protection. He chuckles, remarking that what they're doing right now might be more valuable to the king than standing guard. She looks at him with a hint of vulnerability, expressing her desire for him to trust her a bit more. He teases her, asking if she wants to be his personal protector, and she quickly clarifies that that's not what she meant. Just as they're bantering, they notice a woman running towards the lake, her distress palpable. Without hesitation, they follow her, and she's frantic, telling them that a child has fallen into the water. Ars springs into action, shedding his armor and diving into the lake. The water is dark, making it hard to see, but suddenly it's illuminated, and he spots the child. He rescues the baby and brings them to safety, where the relieved mother thanks him profusely. Meanwhile, Melodina advises the mother to take the baby to a medical professional to ensure they're in good health. Ars jokes that he's glad he hadn't had any liquor, or his vision would have been impaired. Melodina playfully scolds him, telling him not to be so careless. As they stand there, Ars wonders aloud who lit up the water for him. Tinashe steps forward, revealing that it was her. She apologizes for her momentary lapse, but Ars reassures her that he's not upset and thanks her, saying the light totally saved him. He adds that they got things under control, so it's fine if she wants to return to her post. She bows and walks away. Everyone watches her in astonishment. After a moment, Melodina tells Ars to get out of his wet clothes. Ars, still surprised, says he didn't expect a mage to be so beautiful. He asks Melodina if Tanasha is from the castle. Melodina replies that she thinks Tanasha is the mage who was sent to the tower and has now returned with the prince. Ars smiles and says he thought that was just a rumor. He adds that he didn't think the prince was interested in things like love or women, and that now, after seeing her, it's no wonder. Then Melodina asks him, with anger, what exactly is no wonder, because the prince is not like that at all. Ars smirks, and she tells him to wipe that stupid look off his face. He teases her by saying that jealousy is an ugly thing. After that, at night on the castle balcony, Tanasha is floating in the air. The prince sees her and calls her. As she stands beside him, he asks if she's tired of the festival already. She tells him that it's only been 10 minutes and asks him what's happened. With a smile, he says he reached a good point in his work for a break. As he chooses to take a brief pause and visit the festival, he requests her to guide him through the event. She expresses her doubts about whether he should be taking leisure time, given his numerous obligations as a prince. He responds that he frequently sneaks out of the castle to unwind, believing that everyone needs some freedom. His gaze falls upon a paper bird in her hand, and he inquires about its significance. She clarifies that she was inspired by the many people flying paper birds and thought it would be a fun experience to try one out herself. With a gentle flick of her wrist, she launches the paper bird into the air, and he is captivated by the sight. The paper bird soars above, and the people below seem to be swaying under the lights, creating an ethereal ambience that is remarkably breathtaking. He gently taps her on the head, asking if the experience was worthwhile. Coming down from her Tower 4, she beams with joy, confirming that it was indeed worth it. Just as they are relaxed, Razel hurries towards them with pressing news that disrupts their tranquility. Razel seems reluctant to share the news in front of Tanasha, but he informs her that everyone is searching for her. The prince places a comforting hand on her shoulder, turns to Razel with a hint of amusement, and tells him that he needs to practice what he advocates about not backing away from challenges. However, Razel's expression turns grave, and he notifies the prince that someone has been slain, leaving both the prince and Tanasha stunned by the news. The scene shifts to inside the castle. Themis, the mage who had partnered with her, was found dead under suspicious circumstances. After a child was rescued from a trench and the solar orb set, his magical light faded. About 30 minutes later, his body was discovered in a narrow passage nearby. Tanasha was the only mage who left her post and the festival early, making her a key person of interest. As she sat with the other mages, she wondered if her reputation as a wish-granting sorceress would affect their judgment, regardless of the truth. The mages discussed the scene, noting that Themis' remains were badly damaged, but his unique emblem confirmed his identity. His light had disappeared just before Tanasha was reported missing from her assigned location. They questioned her about her whereabouts and the status of her post during that time. As she sat in silence, she recalled a mysterious warning from a stranger who had told her the world's burdens would overwhelm her if she wasn't careful. She reflected on whether that person could have foreseen such a fate. The chief mage, Humu, calls Tanasha once more, seeking details on her location before Themis' discovery. As he asks her to tell the truth, another mage gets upset, demanding to know why she can't answer correctly. He presses her for details, asking where she was and what she did during the time of the incident. However, she stays silent, prompting the lead mage to intervene and calm down the upset mage, reminding him that he's jumping to conclusions without all the facts. Just then, the prince walks into the room, explaining that his father has asked him to take care of the situation. He turns to the lead mage and asks what's happening, seeking an update on the investigation. The lead mage briefs him on the situation, explaining that they're questioning Tanasha because she was near Themis at the festival. The prince listens attentively and then vouches for her, confirming that she was with him and that Razel saw her too. The room falls silent as everyone is surprised by this revelation. The prince takes charge, telling them to drop the charges against Tanasha, assuring them that she's not the one they're looking for. However, the senior mage raises a valid question, asking how she managed to make her lights work from such a distance. The prince looks at her expectantly, and she understands what's being asked of her. With a subtle gesture, she creates a light and sends it soaring into the air, explaining that she uses her magic uniquely. She elaborates that lights are her talent, and she's skilled at manipulating them. To demonstrate her capabilities, she sends another burst of light into the air, indicating that this distance is about her limit. The head mage gazes at her in astonishment and remarks about the distance. She acknowledges that leaving her post was an error and apologizes for the misunderstanding. She bows to the head mage and requests an apology. The prince then instructs Ars to investigate the crime scene and assigns Melodina to accompany him. He cancels the meeting, directing Ars to report back promptly if he discovers anything. The next day, over breakfast, she confides in the prince that she's blamed for a murder as soon as she steps out of her tower. She feels that nothing positive occurs when she's outside her tower. He comforts her, assuring her that she didn't do anything wrong and offers to shield her from anyone who misjudges her. She inquires if defending her could damage his reputation and suggests that they should reveal her true identity to clear up any misconceptions. However, he cautions against it, saying it would make things more difficult for her. He promises to protect her entirely. She sips her tea, sits down, and asserts that she'll determine what's best for herself. He teases her, saying that leaving things to her would invite trouble, and she might alter everyone's memories. She shoots him a stern look, warning him not to read her mind. He makes a knave face, joking that she's not capable of doing such things anyway. As she sinks into the sofa, she acknowledges that fulfilling the request would be a substantial endeavor. Meanwhile, the prince has responsibilities to attend to, and she should assist me in his tasks. As they work together, she reminds him that their arrangement includes him spending quality time with her, which might impact his reputation. Despite this, he's willing to take that risk, and she's aware that their agreement is only for a year. He encourages her to stay positive, given her future role as his queen. However, she's frustrated that he's dictating her future and tells him to stop. His response is to laugh, and she warns him to cease his teasing. Despite her warnings, he's serious about wanting her to move on from her past and live with him. She's doubtful about his intentions and asks him to clarify. The recent murder is weighing on her mind, and she believes there's more to the situation than what's visible. Although she lacks evidence to support her suspicions, she's determined to investigate further. However, she knows that doing so could lead to complications. She's also preoccupied with finding the enigmatic mage, regretting not pursuing him earlier. If the prince allows her to investigate, she'll need to decide how to proceed, possibly taking on a detective role. As she warns that assigning a military officer to the case would only anger her, Ars knocks on the door, signaling he's finished the investigation. The prince turns to him and asks if he's identified the culprit. Ars replies that the suspect was highly skilled at hiding their involvement, leaving the prince to consider the next move. Given the case's complexity, the prince decides it's important for everyone involved to understand the motive. He tells Ars to gather the key individuals to observe their reactions and hopefully gain new insight. Ars nods and leaves. The prince turns to invite Tanasha to go with him, only to find her calmly floating above the room, sipping tea. The sight makes him smile. By Prince Oscar's command, everyone connected to Themis's murder is gathered for questioning. With the room quiet and tense, Ars begins to explain Themis's background. Themis was a respected imperial mage from the research department, known for his discipline and the admiration of his peers. Recently, he had been investigating the Lake of the Witches, a mysterious place tied to a legendary sealed entity from 7 years ago. He also bore a strange tattoo on his wrist, infused with mystical energy, which raised suspicions about ghost magic. However, Ars clarifies that while ghost mages are rare and powerful, Themis was not one of them. He was simply an ordinary mage, incapable of wielding ghost magic. Attention then turns to the post-mortem findings. Though Themis' body is marked with severe burns and lacerations, poison is the true cause of death. Ars identifies it as Ramasu, an ancient, difficult-to-obtain magic potion. The choice of such a rare poison puzzles the group. If the killer only wanted to murder Themis, more accessible poisons were available. This implies that the method of killing is important, carefully chosen, not random. Ars recounts the events of the day Themis died. After creating his magical lights, Themis spoke with Tanasha. Soon after, a child caused a commotion, drawing attention away from the area. In the confusion, Themis disappeared. Later, his lights began to fade, and when his body was found, Tanasha was notably absent, something Ars found suspicious. At the same time, a mage with a rare emblem on their wrist was seen observing the scene during the incident with the child. Fura, Themis' partner, was the first to realize he was missing. Ars investigated the area where Themis had last been stationed and discovered a sealed glass lantern. This detail stood out. Such a lantern could remain lit much longer than a typical one. Ars theorized that Themis lit these lanterns ahead of time and left them burning, making it appear as though he was still at his post. In reality, he slipped away, likely to meet someone he trusted. Then came the disturbing part. Ars explained that while a mage with Themis' emblem was seen at the scene, it was not Themis. The killer, he believed, severed Themis' arm and used it to display the rare emblem, wearing it in a way that drew attention while hiding their own identity beneath robes. This allowed the killer to impersonate Themis from a distance, fooling anyone who might look too closely. Ars concludes that the murder is premeditated and precise. The killer clearly knows Themis well enough to arrange a private meeting. When the child's accident disrupts the plan, the killer adapts. To keep up the illusion that Themis is still alive, they disguise themselves using his robe and severed arm, turning an unexpected mistake into the perfect cover. This level of familiarity suggests a personal connection between the killer and the victim. The audience finds the scenario revolting, highlighting the killer's calculating and complex mindset. The gruesome details of the murder and the killer's cunning plan leave a lasting impression on those listening. Furthermore, the killer's choice of meeting location reinforces the notion that they were intimately acquainted with Themis. Ars presents the results of his inquiry, and the room falls into a momentary silence. The prince expresses appreciation to Ars, and as he takes his seat, the individuals around the table start to whisper among themselves, speculating about the killer's identity. The prince suspects that the killer is present in the room, but the question remains, how can they capture them without tipping them off? Tinashe reveals that she's a former ghost mage, adding another layer of intricacy to the investigation. She accuses Fura of giving Themis the tattoo, addressing her as young Fura. Fura is taken aback, asking Tinashe why she would assume she's a ghost mage. Tinashe responds calmly, revealing that she can sense what ghost mages are merely by looking at them, sending a chill down Fura's spine. Tinashe presses Fura again, her voice stern and insistent, asking if she gave him the tattoo. Fura denies it, but Tinashe's words cut deep. Themis took her innocence, stripping her of her abilities. This revelation leaves everyone stunned, and Fura becomes immobile, clutching her necklace tightly. Fura recounts her story, driven by ardor for Themis, but couldn't bear the situation that unfolded. She confesses to killing him purely for the sake of her own dignity, and that was the sole motivation. The head mage announces that the case can now be formally closed once and for all, bringing a sense of finality to the proceedings. Ars and another officer have a detailed admission from Fura on file, which will undoubtedly serve as crucial evidence. Tinashe mentions that the magic used to create the tattoos preserves its mystical properties as long as the imprinter is alive, shedding new light on the case. Melodina asks Ars how he could have missed something so obvious, and he reluctantly agrees. Prince Oscar points out that Fura likely doused Themis in oil and set him on fire immediately, a desperate and brutal act. To avoid suspicion, she tricked the other mages into believing she was still with Themis, and even cut his arm herself to make the deception more convincing. Prince Oscar commends Ars, praising his sharp mind and vital contribution to the case. The head mage then adds a personal note, revealing that Themis had once confided in him about plans to marry Fura. He raises a thoughtful question. Did Themis truly see Fura as unworthy, as she claimed, or was it simply a tragic misunderstanding? He admits they may never know the truth. With the mystery concluded, the meeting ends, and everyone returns to their duties. Later, Tinashe asks the prince why he chose to serve as her personal assistant. He jokes that he prefers her tea over his own family's, making her smile. She then reflects on her situation, calling it somewhat unstable. The prince replies casually, saying he's just following his father's wishes, and they don't have much else to do right now. He then brings up a more personal question, whether it's true that ghost mages lose their powers after losing their virginity. Tinashe smiles brightly and explains that if a ghost mage becomes romantically involved with someone, their souls could merge. Because of this, they must carefully control their magic. Most people struggle with losing their powers when they engage in romantic relations, and it's a well-known fact among their kind. However, Tinashe claims she has immense power that wouldn't be affected, and her confidence in her abilities is unwavering. Prince reassures her he'll protect her, even if she loses some magic, and his words are laced with sincerity. He seems to genuinely care for her well-being, and his concern is palpable. She reacts with anger, scolding him for his comment and seeming to take offense at his suggestion. Her response is swift and sharp, and it's clear she's not one to be trifled with. Just then, Razel interrupts, revealing that Fura took her own life with the same poison that killed Themis. The news sends a somber mood over the group, and the atmosphere becomes heavy with contemplation. Tinashe's expression turns thoughtful, and she begins to ponder the implications of Fura's actions. She suggests further investigation, as the poison's age implies Fura wasn't the sole perpetrator. They examine the evidence they have on Fura and find reports of a suspicious elderly person who frequently visited her, as well as a stranger seen in the castle on the day of the murder. The trail went cold, and the person was never caught, leaving more questions than answers. Tinasha's curiosity is piqued, and she becomes determined to uncover the truth. She takes Fura's body to a quiet forest and gives her a respectful burial, reflecting on the tragic circumstances of her life and death. She ponders the motivations that drove Fura to such drastic actions and the secrets that may forever remain unknown. As she stands over Fura's grave, Tinasha can't help but wonder what other secrets lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered. A young man reads a page that speaks of 5 special lakes, including the enigmatic Deus Lake. According to legends, 7 years ago, the Farsas family was attacked by a legendary creature. It was the Witch of the Azure Moon who intervened, forcing the beast into the lake and sealing it away. He laughs quietly to himself. A girl named Mizu approaches Wald, drawn by curiosity. Wald shares a darker truth, that a man who once came to this place was killed by his fiancée, who had been under the control of an ancient magician. The revelation leaves Mizu visibly shocked. The boy acknowledges how difficult things have been since then, but says they'd managed to stay strong. He explains that the witch is involved again now, despite the warnings she was given. Mizu wonders if they're planning to oppose her. Calmly, the boy channels magic in the page in his hands. He expresses that he has no intention of hurting the witch or revealing her secret. Only the one who possesses Akasha has the power to do that, and the prince has no desire to use it. With a faint smile, the boy makes it clear he is simply observing events unfold. He then burns the page, stating that his influence is limited to working from behind the scenes. Elsewhere, within the walls of the palace, an old man with a sly grin steps inside. He casts a spell with subtle precision, whispering to himself that only a little more time is needed. The scene shifts to Tinasha is soaring through the sky, thinking that there's a chance that hasn't been given up on for a long time, so she keeps looking for it. For a guy who was believed to have died ages ago. She tells herself that she'll meet him again, and says that maybe everything she's been doing until now has been pointless. A week after the festival incident, castle life returns to normal. Magic students, including Tinasha, usually attend classes or do research, but she often takes on small jobs. So she checks the bulletin board, and the prince takes a note, saying it's interesting. He explains it's a month-long job helping a group move within the city, which might allow her to explore nearby villages. Tinasha claims she's not interested in sightseeing, she's there to work. He attempts to convince her by revealing he'll accompany her, citing concerns about her safety. She argues that she's not a child and can handle herself. The castle's inhabitants glance over, whispering comments. He emphasizes that if anything happens to her, he'd be too late to intervene. She fixes him with a stare, suggesting she'd like to have a serious conversation with him soon. He responds that his perception of her is accurate. She turns to him and says that since he's already chosen this task for her, she'll see it through. She sets off, determined to go alone, despite the prince's efforts to persuade her otherwise. The prince smiles wryly to himself, thinking that now that she's gone, he needs to focus on his responsibilities. Meanwhile, Ars is drilling the soldiers when Tinasha arrives on the scene. He asks if she has a message from the prince. She stretches her arms and legs, explaining that she's completed her tasks and is feeling a bit stifled by the routine of castle life. She asks if she can join in to get some physical activity, if it's not a bother. Ars inquires if the prince has been pestering her again and offers to let her practice sword fighting with him, giving the soldiers a breather. The soldiers are thrilled by the break, and Ars turns his attention to Tinasha. He asks if she's a novice with a sword, and she replies that she has some experience, arching her back in a stretch. He tells her to try and parry his attacks, and they begin. Ars is taken aback by her skill, which exceeds his expectations. He accelerates his tempo, and she retaliates with maximum force. The soldiers gaze at her prowess in awe, deeming her more adept than Melodina. Ars concurs, recognizing her exceptional skill, but resolves to keep this observation to himself. He attempts to press her, but she counters every blow with precision. After a while, they pause, and she remarks that she hasn't engaged in this activity recently, which might have drained her energy sooner than expected. Ars interrupts, saying she's remarkably skilled for someone with limited experience. He commends her and suggests she consider abandoning her magical pursuits to join their ranks. She expresses gratitude, returns the sword, and requests the opportunity to spar with him again in the future, if it's convenient. With that, she exits the training area. As Ars watches her depart, He reflects on his initial impression of her as merely a mage who caught the prince's eye. However, her swordsmanship reveals a depth of battle experience that challenges his assumptions. He wonders what secrets she might be hiding. Later, a lecturer in a classroom remarks that 400 years ago, the ancient realm of magic disintegrated suddenly. A notable part of magical expertise was lost to the ages. Tinashe is engrossed in a lesson, taking diligent notes. Kav-san enters the classroom, sits next to her, and queries whether the lecture is engaging. She responds in the affirmative. During the lesson, a disturbance outside interrupts their concentration. An elderly gentleman is berating the staff. The lecturer recaptures the students' attention and continues expounding on the recognition of mages. While waiting, the old man feels insulted and ignored. He takes out a flask, remembering, if the crown prince has a mystic advisor, the liquid could weaken their power. The elderly man grins to himself. Meanwhile, the prince is absorbed in his responsibilities.
Here I am, know it's been